Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hey friends, Jason here. In this episode, I had the opportunity to catch up with John Kelly, Chief Corporate Officer with Jo-Kell, based in Chesapeake, Virginia. Jo-Kell is a high technology distributor focused on naval applications and industrial markets. I met John several years ago at the University of Innovative Distribution, and you could just tell he had this curious spark. This may have come from his first job with Best Buy and how they instilled the notion, if it isn't broke, fix it, which led to this mentality of continuous improvement. As you will hear, he really loves the nuances of the government sector, but at the same time is very pragmatic about the special hoops that organization must jump through to stay in the game. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope you do too. All right. Hey, John, welcome to Distribution Talk. Thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, as always, I like to start out with a little history lesson. How did you get involved in distribution? How did you get roped in? Let's put it that way.
That's a good way to put it, actually, getting roped in. I kind of fell into it. Jo-Kell is a family-owned business, and when I was a kid, I always swore I'd never A, live in Chesapeake, which is where we're headquartered, or B, work for my parents. And
I think we all did, John. We all said we'd never do it.
And I've done both, right? So I left school, I left college and went to work for a band. I was an audio engineer for a band for a few years. And as the band was unwinding and I needed money, basically. I started working part-time for my parents, and that transitioned to full-time. And we had a vice president at the time his name was Mike Williams. And he's the one who convinced me to actually to come work there, because he told me that I'd work for him and not for my parents. And that gave me enough of okay, all right, I didn't want to work directly for my parents. So that makes sense. And now, of course, I work directly underneath them. I work with them every day and I love it. But at the time when I was a kid, that really helped push me over the edge to make that move. So it was a move of necessity to pay the rent, and then it became a career. So,
yeah, it's kind of funny, how that first influence in your family business comes. I remember, he may not have been my first boss, but one of my first bosses in the company said, I don't care what your last name is. I'm just going to treat you all the same as everybody else.
Well, and I'm like, okay. That's what I wanted, because I didn't want to be treated differently or given special treatment because, I was a family member. That would make me feel really uncomfortable. And to this day, that's how I like to think about it. I don't want to be looked at as anything other than being in a position that I'm in because I've earned it, not because of my last name.
Well, I think that's, the desire of every next generation, or, that we would like to earn our way in there. But, let's face it, man, there's a little bit of a paved way there,
there are advantages that I will say that, and I'm not going to pretend that those don't exist, but as much as possible, I'd like to make sure that it's as even a playing field as I can. So
sure.
That was kind of my story of getting in. I started off, I've worked in our warehouse. I've worked in marketing. When I was in high school, the very first thing I ever did for the company before I joined later on, a buddy of mine in high school and I designed our company's first website.
Oh, so nice. Okay.
I think it's still on archive.org. You can see what my friend did back when I was 16. But, I've done marketing, I've done expediting, I've done sales, I've done inside sales, outside sales. I think I've done everything in the company except for accounting, which I am not qualified for.
Yeah.
So
I remember I got to do collections one time, and I was okay at it. Not great, but okay at it. So.
Yeah. I actually, our accounting team is very good at collections, so they don't want me in there because I'd probably screw it up big time.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's just been a journey, throughout the entire company. And I think one of the benefits of it was being able to learn all different aspects of the business and getting to know how the company operates, not only just on paper, but like seeing it and doing it personally. And I think that was a big help in really getting my understanding of how distribution works in general, getting that formed.
So for those of us who don't really know much about your industry, could you explain that high-tech distribution? I mean, what does that really mean?
It means different things for different types of distributors, obviously. Our company, Jo-Kell, is a company that focuses a lot of our efforts into power and motor control. So on the high-tech side of distribution of that type of product. Our bread and butter is actually circuit breakers. It's our biggest selling product. We work a lot with a lot of different industries. We work with the Navy, we work with the federal government, and then we also work with industrial type customers, which again also means different things to different people depending on who you talk to. But
industrial distribution is a wide channel. So
it very much is, and we focus on what most people would think of as like factory type customers, but also towards municipality, a lot of water, wastewater things like that we get involved in. So one of the things that we're really known for is being able to find anything. One of the stories that I've heard is, so my grandfather started the company in 1977, and one of his first orders for the Navy, or it may have been the shipyard, I have to double check that, but was a pallet of sand. They just needed sand. And he's like, all right, I'll get it for you. So he did. So especially in that part of the world, in the Navy type world, we're kind of known as being able to find things that other people can't find and sell weird things. Another big customer of ours is Newport News Shipbuilding, who builds the aircraft carriers in Newport News, Virginia. And on one of the most recent carriers, our company sold the gym equipment that went in, the furniture for the, what's it called? It's a, non-denominational, like religious type room, right? So we had like altars,
like pews and things like that.
Yeah. They have on the aircraft carrier for services.
Chapel.
And,
chapel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Chapel. Thank you.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of the word.
That's all right. It's okay. Yeah.
So we had at one point in our warehouse, we had an altar just waiting to go to an aircraft carrier. So for an electrical distributor, it's kind of weird, but it's a little bit of what we're known for.
Right. It's interesting. When I grew up in the construction supply business, and we would get all kinds of interesting requests. Hey, can you get us some hay bales? Yeah, I think we can find that. Or can you get us some motor oil? Yeah, we can find that too. So and actually, it became a fairly lucrative side of the business, that non-stock procurement. But I do find that many distributors tend to undervalue that service, so they won't put the margin on they should. I mean, they're terrified to go over a certain percentage. There's this mental ceiling when you do that where, hey, wait a minute, I went and just found the stuff and got it there. And I'm not sure how I got it. And it cost me a lot more to procure it. I should get a premium there. And then I find that sometimes we don't.
And there's a reason why they go to you for that. And there's a value to that. Since I don't have it in my warehouse, I can only make, 3% on it or anything like that. It's, with some of our customers, some of the value is jumping through the hoops to actually become an approved supplier. And there are, a lot of companies that they could buy from technically with a credit card, but they're not allowed to. They have to go through an approved supplier. So there is value to doing that as well. And it wasn't free to get us set up like that either.
No, it was a process for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's interesting. I know it's kind of a segue from what we thought we might talk about, but that non-stock procurement is really one of those things that I wish distributors, especially in the customer service side, would really understand how they do have to bump up that margin.
Yeah.
That they can't live on your stock margin. I mean, that's just not okay. You really need to go kind of above and beyond that.
Absolutely. So. And it's such a large part of our business overall that if we did discount it, we'd be in trouble. I mean, we do a significant amount of business that is non-stock. It behooves us to make sure that we price it appropriately.
I worked with a client years ago, and he was about 30% of his overall revenue was non-stock. So he had to, just like you're talking about, he had to do well on that. Yeah. And we had found that actually that the average margin was lower. And so we spent a lot of time working on getting that above the stock, that stock margin out there.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Going back to, you kind of mentioned you spent a lot of time, you all are known to work with the Navy, and that's a huge part of your business. Could you talk a little bit about getting that approved business, or you're getting involved with them?
Yeah. So the way we started with that, was before my time at the company, but I believe the way it all began was a product of the area that we live in. So we're based out of Chesapeake, Virginia. Hampton Roads is the name of the area. It's 7 different unique cities all right together. But we have, the largest naval shipyard in the world is here. We've got a huge base. There's a ton of Navy presence in this area. So that alone kind of dominates the mindset of this area is the
Mhm.
Navy. So I think even though my grandfather came from, before he started Jo-Kell, he worked at a company called Best Repair, which is still in existence and is actually one of our customers. It really had very little to do with the Navy at the time, but because of where he was, it was just inevitable that he'd get involved in it. So the Navy in general it's kind of hard to say how much of our business is quote unquote Navy, because we have to split it up. We have 3 different segments of our business, and we have an industrial and aftermarket side. We have a what we call program side, which is the Navy new construction. So it's technically selling to private companies, but it's the private companies that build ships for the Navy. They're the programs that the Navy develops. And then the third is our direct to government sales, the federal government mostly. So when you say the Navy's in all 3 of those technically.
Right.
So it just depends on who the end user for a lot of that stuff is the Navy, but who the actual customer is that we're dealing with that dictates how we go to market. So, when we deal with Newport News Shipbuilding or any of the other programs, there's a lot of, like I mentioned before, getting to be an approved supplier. And we're a company that it's called SDI, Supplier Designated Inspection. And this is a huge value to them, because what it means is when a product comes in to us, we act as their inspectors, and we can inspect the product, and then we could bring it right to the pier where they need it. Whereas other companies that don't have that level have to bring it to the main receiving, and then it has to go through their inspection process. It take a lot longer to get to where it's necessary. So getting that set up and then going through the audits every year, and it's not just our companies approved. We have individual people that are approved to be these inspectors. So it's a lot of work. Yeah. Again, that's not even the Navy.
Right. Well, that's interesting. It's fascinating how much certification and how much of that process you have to go through. It's very similar, to some of the certifications that you see in like the fastener industry or something like that. There's some high certifications that you do, lot traceability and things like that. And it sounds like that you all do that and maybe even a little bit more. I mean,
it's really... and traceability is a big thing. Like you said, when dealing with anything that's going on to a Navy ship, most material is vetted way in advance by the Navy, by the engineers, and they're given a military specification. And so you hear the stories about the toilet seats that cost $500.
Yes. Yeah. So, sure. I remember this.
I don't know how true that actually is, but there's a reason behind it. And the reason is because it might look like that same toilet seat that you can get, at Home Depot, but that toilet seat's been through all these tests where they actually take it out on a barge and blow it up and see how it explodes. And it has to be made in a certain way so that if the ship is attacked and hit with something, they know exactly how it's going to operate. So it looks like a regular toilet seat, but it's been through way more to get onto that ship. So we don't really deal with the toilet seats, but the circuit breakers that we sell to the Navy, they're pretty similar to the ones that you'd find in your house. They're not, functionally, they're not very different at all, but they're hardened and they're made to survive in environments that your normal circuit breakers aren't. So while a 5 amp circuit breaker at Home Depot may cost you, $10 or even cheaper, it's, hundreds of dollars to the Navy because of all the extra stuff that A, has to be built into it, but B, also has to be tested. And that's not free and it's not cheap. But
I didn't see that segment on CNN. I didn't see those guys talking about all the extra stuff that has to be done to this.
They leave that part out.
Yeah, they did. They left that part out for some reason.
But it's also very important that when they order one of those, that they get that exact one. Right. So, and that's what I mentioned. Traceability is making sure that they're buying through authorized channels and that it can be proven that what they bought is exactly what they ordered. And so there's a lot of record keeping that comes along with that. And there's a side of the business called surplus, which is basically items that can't be traced back to the original manufacturer because at some point it changed hands and there's no documentation. So it may be legitimate, but it may not be. And that's a whole problem for distributors like us, is people dealing in surplus material that some of them are a little unscrupulous and will
Yeah, a little shady.
yeah,
Okay, I can see that.
maybe
Yeah.
not say that it's surplus and
Yeah.
we'll have a buyer from the Navy call us and say, hey, this person's offering the same thing you are, but way cheaper. And we're like, yeah, that's because they're not offering what we're offering. They're offering something
Right.
illegitimate. And, sometimes they listen to us and sometimes they go by what's on the paper and take a chance. And it can be scary
Sure.
sometimes.
Well, and absolutely. And if somebody gets caught, in that they have to have that kind of traceability and they can't provide it. Yeah, you're talking about somebody, getting a little discussion. Yeah, there'll be a discussion.
It's more than that. You can go to jail.
Oh, okay.
And actually, my dad years ago had to testify at a trial where another distributor was selling material as new that actually was surplus. And yeah, that's a while back. I was a kid when that happened, but he still tells me about it. And he I don't look good in orange, and I think he would say the same thing. So we definitely want to keep things on the up and up.
For sure. So, one of the things that, a lot of people don't understand, or don't really participate in GSA contracts and things like this, and they don't really go down I do have friends that are in that, but they, at least in the business I grew up in, they tend to be more the anomaly because maybe they didn't want to do all the paperwork and they didn't want the rigmarole.
Yeah.
Is this a lucrative business to go into? Should some, obviously not to compete with you, but is there I know a lot of people have looked at that government contract business and, in all facets of those contracts, but is it worth it to go through this?
That is a great question, because for me, I guess it depends on the day. Some days it's not worth it, but I think what happens is a lot of people will hear a story about somebody who got a great government contract, or will see something on the news and think, oh man, I need to get in on this. And it can seem like an easy thing to do, and it's really not. And so when you're dealing with the federal government, pretty much every contract they have is put out publicly for bid. And it's all put out on a website that anybody can go to and anybody can register for, and really anybody can make an offer. So to get started in that way, it's not that hard, but there's a lot of problems that come along with it, in that, one, because it's public and because everybody sees what's out there, it's cutthroat. And our direct government sales business is way lower margin than any of the rest of our business. And a lot of the really big contracts you hear about, I'm not going to say anything particular about any one contract that we have, but I know for a fact that some of them are taken at like 1% and things like that. And, somebody says, oh man, this one company got a $15 million contract. Well, they're not really making millions of dollars off of that. Like, I've seen their cost. They're only making 15 grand or something. It's
right. It's that brutal. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So it's cutthroat. Now, if you've got a niche product, that's another thing. Maybe there is room for you there. But when it comes to the commodities, it's cutthroat. And then on the backside, it's easy to get caught where you think you've got everything covered. Let's say you win a contract, you wanted a great margin, you got a 25% on it and everything. And then you get the contract and it's a stack of papers. Even for one item, it's a stack of papers that you have to go through. So many things you have to comply with. And the things that can really get you are things like shipping. Most of the time is on you. It's not paid for by the government. It's included in the price. And there's special packaging requirements that can range from, well, just leave it in the commercial packaging and we're okay, to you need to build a custom crate out of this special type of wood, and it needs to be built in this certain way. And all of a sudden that 25% you were making on that turns into negative 10%. Yeah. So I don't want to discourage people from doing business. I will discourage them from competing with me, but no,
that's a good idea. Yeah, sure. I'm with you now.
But in general, you gotta know what you're doing before you get involved in it, because too many people do, and they end up losing a lot of money. And most of the time you hear about that in our industry, and either they just don't fulfill the contract and just kind of walk away. I don't really know what happens to those people if they get hunted down or whatever. But a lot of times you see the same contracts come back over and over again because they were never fulfilled, or they end up losing money. They fulfill it anyway and they just lose money. And it's, nobody wants to lose money. It's not a recipe for a continued business success.
Not at all. It's really interesting. Yeah, that is interesting, because again, you do see the lure of this larger contract, or, I've seen these GSA bids, that the quantity is wonderful and astronomical, and you're thinking, man, I'm going to crush it. But you're right that you never win them, because you're way too, you're trying to, bid at your normal margin
Yeah.
or even best contractor price or best customer price. And you're still going to get your backside handed to you.
Yeah, you could. I'd recommend if there isn't anybody listening who's thinking about doing it, there's a great thing that you can do is, look at a product that you'd be thinking of selling directly to the government, and you can search for previous contracts for that item. So if it's
Interesting. Yeah.
So if it's something that you're a distributor for, if it's if it's, something that's your bread and butter that's in your warehouse and you're like, oh, let me see, you can look up previous contracts and see what other people want it for and see, hey, wait a minute, I know my cost last year was $40 and they wanted it at 33. How is that possible? Maybe that manufacturer's cutting them a better deal, or maybe they just have a ton of back stock, and it's like, just look it up before you dive in, because you never know.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. Most people think that kind of once you're in the game, once you're in the government world or government contract world, and you all have been doing it, for quite some time, for decades, it's not always a win business. It's not always a cash cow. It's not always the steady stream. You shared with me a little earlier that there was a little thing called sequestration.
Oh, yeah.
So would you mind? Yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
So, a lot of people in the industrial distribution world remember really well the years of 08 and 09 when the recession hit, and how bad that hit a lot of distributors. And one thing that really helped us during that time is the amount of business that we had in the Navy world, because of the way that they do their budgeting and their contracts is they're done typically in advance. Where it's kind of beholden to Congress. Sometimes they don't pass a budget and you get continuing resolutions, and that's a whole nother story. But when it comes to shipbuilding and ship construction, when they decide to build an aircraft carrier, they don't just stop halfway through, right? That's
right.
decided many years in advance. So, and back in 08 and 09, we did see a hit on our industrial side, but we were really helped with the Navy side of our business. But at the same time, not too long after that, actually, I think it was because of that recession, the government in their budgeting process decided to, and I don't remember the exact scenario of how it worked out, but I think that the idea was if the government didn't pass a budget, the budget was automatically like set in advance. So if they couldn't pass something, they were stuck with something that was decided years before. And this was called sequestration. And so the Navy side of the business, and this was, I want to say it was like 11 and 12 was when it really started hitting. But that was when it didn't really have, if you look back at the budgets, it's not like the military spending budget took a nosedive. It was at worst flat, right? But the problem was the perception that it put in the market and how everybody felt about like, oh no, we're not going to be able to get these other things this year. And everybody, like the Navy, started tightening up how much they were buying. The industry surrounding it started tightening up how much they were doing. And so there was a period of time where, even though if you go back down, you look at the budget and you say, but they still had all these billions of dollars in the budget. It was like a freak out moment for the entire industry where nobody wanted to spend any money. And so, we had a time where every couple months we were trying to figure out what the government budget was doing, because we had no idea how it was going to impact our business. And that's a problem on the Navy government side of things, is that those political decisions that happen, nowhere near you, happen in DC, can really come back and affect you. And when you have times like 08, 09, and even now during COVID, when you have some stability that other distributors might not, there's a lot of political instability that can really make you give second thoughts on doing that kind of business. Right. So we were lucky. We didn't have any major negative impacts throughout the time. And we definitely had some slower years because of sequestration, but we never had a time where, one of the things that we're very proud of is we've never had to lay anybody off for our entire history. So we make sure that we're running as efficiently as possible, and that when times like that hit, we're able to weather that storm and not have to resort to things like layoffs or cutbacks and things like that. So there's been some tough years with the government, and you never know. Like, we've got a new administration now, and no matter what happens, no matter who gets elected, whenever there's a new administration, there's always some uncertainty on how things are going to be handled. So I imagine coming up in the next few months, there's going to be some trepidation in the market of spending, especially as we get closer.
Yeah.
The government fiscal year ends it starts October 1st, so end of September.
Right.
And so as you get closer to that, most years, a lot of the government buyers are trying to spend as much as they can in September. But with a new administration, they may hold back because they're not sure what's going to happen. So I don't know. We'll see. So you've got
a little bit of an interesting period coming up here.
Absolutely. And
later this year. Yeah.
That's not a Republican Democrat thing. I mean, we could talk about that stuff if you want to too. That's just an every administration change nervousness to begin with. And then you've got the partisan side of it as well that could affect things one way or the other. And that it can be nerve-wracking dealing with the government. So it's not for everybody.
Yeah, so 2021, so you got a share of uncertainty for you for many reasons. But if I could throw another log on the fire, you decided to get in the acquisition business. So there's another thing you decided to do to yourself. And you're knee deep in it right now, aren't you? I mean,
we're right in the middle of it. Yeah. I can't reveal too much about it, but we are in the middle of an acquisition that should close. I believe 4 weeks from yesterday is the close date. So I can tell you, it's a small company, very similar to Jo-Kell in how it was founded and how it was run. And it's something that we've been looking at for a couple of years now. And it's just something that fits our culture so well. My colleague, Kristen Parkinson, who was our COO, she and I went out there before all the COVID stuff happened. We've sat down with the team out there, and it's just it's a great fit for what we do. And now it does give some uncertainty, right? Obviously, one of the things that we're really trying to do is strengthen our industrial side of our business, and this acquisition does that. It's a company that does very little business with the Navy side of things. They have like a very tiny customer that they just happen to do business with the Navy, but the rest of it is all industrial OEM type business.
Interesting.
So it allows us to strengthen that side of our business. And, let's say we do start having budget problems with the government, that'll help us even more through times like that in having a more industrial base for our business. So it's exciting. This is my first one. I've never done an acquisition before. And it's nerve-wracking, but it's fun. All the people that we're dealing with are excellent. And but it is brand new.
There's a ton of optimism, and I think, that's been my experience over the years, is that, you're very optimistic. You're excited about the prospect and everything. And then as actually just an interview I did recently, he was saying, you think you're buying a one-story house, and all of a sudden they found a second level up there, and you're like, man, what did I get myself into?
Yeah. So far we haven't had that happen yet, but I say yet because I feel like something has to be found, right? But hopefully it's a good thing that's found and not a bad thing. But I think we've gotten to that point in our company where we have a stocking location in Jacksonville, Florida, and San Diego, California. And then we have a few different satellite or, remote satellite locations as well, that mostly just remote sales. So we kind of got to the point of how much more can we grow with where we are. Nobody ever has 100% of the market, but I don't think you ever can get 100% of the market. So I think we were getting close to hitting a ceiling of growth without doing an acquisition. And this is something that our company had looked at for not just this one acquisition, but acquiring a company in general, something we've been thinking about for a while as a way to grow the company moving forward. And again, I think the way this company fits with our culture just made it a no-brainer. So my mom's our CEO. Suzy Kelly is our CEO. And my dad, Marty Kelly, is our president. And the two of us, after going out there, we went to Marty and Suzy. And yes, I do call them Marty and Suzy. I don't call them
That's
Mom
a good
and Dad.
idea. Okay, yeah. That's always a tough one, man. That is really a tough question. How are you going to address your parents when you're still working for them?
Early on, decided Marty and Suzy because it was something that would make me stand out less. Everybody else calls them Marty and Suzy. If I called them Mom and Dad, I'd be the different one. So very early on, it was Marty and Suzy. And now it's weird at home. If I go over visit and all my sisters are in town and I call them Marty and Suzy, they're like, what? But anyway, Kristen and I went to Marty and Suzy and we said, look, we really believe in this. This is something that, when it comes to an acquisition, this is much of a no-brainer as you could get, in our opinion. I've never done an acquisition before. I believe this is Kristen's first as well. I think she may have been in a company that got acquired many years ago,
Right.
but I'd have to verify. But
Yeah.
we said we basically guarantee it. So we kind of put ourselves on the line, and we gave some numbers and dates and said, if we can't hit this by this time, we've done something wrong. So I think in one thing that shows how much we believe in what we're doing and how we're doing it. But the other thing, it kind of puts a fire under us to make sure that we can really get there.
It's been my experience, John, that the time to break even, the break even time is actually a little longer than you expect. So I'm just going to warn you up front, 18 months to 2 years ain't bad, So don't get upset if that doesn't happen.
Wait, to break even? We were looking for doubling their revenue in 2 years. I'm
talking about not losing a Mercedes a month, man.
Oh,
that's
man.
what I'm talking about here.
Oh.
But the point is, that you're going to find some things, and some of your expectations are going to get tempered a little bit, but it doesn't mean it was a bad idea. It probably could have been a very good idea. I think that a lot of benefits, even though people say, oh, it's the customer list that I'm acquiring, that's the benefit. Actually, what I found is that you can acquire some really great talent and some people to join your management team, maybe from afar, but you can bring in some different ideas. And I think it just kind of breaks up the thought process, in your company. And so if you look at it that way, that there's some real positives to it. Now, I mean, I've run into the others, but that being said, I think that it's still a very interesting way, to change your business. It's great to expand your footprint. Not only that, and you actually, by acquiring companies, you become much more attractive to your suppliers as well.
Yeah.
So when they see players moving, then it's
absolutely
attractive.
Yeah. And I think, what you said earlier about a lot of people look at the acquisition as getting the customer list. And it's funny. I don't think I've ever looked at this one that way. I really think that the main draw for this acquisition from my perspective has been the people and the talent that's there. And I think part of the reason why I really think that it's something where we could see some significant growth fairly quickly, maybe not 2 years, but fairly quickly, is they have a lot of talent there. They have a lot of technical knowledge, and a lot of what they're doing is not concentrating on the things that make them successful. So, you have sales guys that are dealing with the minutia of an order when they could be out visiting the customer, or they're dealing with a vendor when that could be handled by somebody from an operational standpoint. Or you have a sales guy getting ready to do a trade show when we had trade shows, but
back in the old days,
back in the trade show days. But if a sales guy has to take a week of his time to get set up, everything ready for a trade show, he's not selling. So there's a lot of talent there that I think is going to benefit from being freed from a lot of that stuff and be able to really utilize the talent that they have. So that's the main thing. The customer list is absolutely part of it, but man, I can't wait to see what the folks that we're going to start working with, what they do once they can really do their job and not 80 other jobs.
No, I completely agree with you. The more you can free up those salespeople to knock on doors, create relationships, life gets better.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
A great point. So real quickly, if I could, I just want to segue one more time here. You have been very involved with your trade association with the AHTD, Association of High Tech Distributors. There we go.
Yes. Oh, actually, it changed. The name changed.
What is the new name, please?
So it used to be the Association of High Technology Distributors, but it changed. I don't remember how long ago it changed. It's to Association of High Technology Distribution, because we actually do have plenty of manufacturers as members as well. It's not just distributors in there. So, yeah.
There you go. So you joined the exec board, and first of all, how were you invited on? I mean, I guess, how did you become involved with that, the board of directors for the association?
Oh, all right. So let me go back many years. So the first ever meeting of AHTD I ever attended was in Marco Island, Florida. And I was 13 years old because my parents were attending and I was there at the hotel. And
family vacation / convention.
What I remember most about that HTD meeting was that hotel had an arcade in it, and the arcade games didn't take quarters. You just press start and you could play. And I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. So, but when I actually did start working for the company full time, my dad was a pretty regular attendee of AHTD, and he wanted me to go out there and get involved. And they do 2 meetings a year in different locations, and typically it is pretty nice places to try to entice, people.
I remember. I remember going out to San Diego.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we saw each other in San Diego. Yeah, and but not just San Diego. It was Coronado.
It was Coronado. No, it was nice. It was one of the coolest places I've been in a long time. So greatest elevator I've ever seen in my life.
But yeah, so I started going, and at first, and one of the things I think about, especially about AHTD, but about any of these associations in general, is you get out of it what you put in.
Yeah.
And at first I was attending, and I didn't really, I'd listen to the speakers, and we had a lot of great speakers and get a lot of takeaways from that, but it wasn't like something that I was really getting a lot of fulfillment out of. There might have been some cool things that I wrote down, but it wasn't anything that was mind blowing or anything crazy insights from other distributors. And so I heard some people talking about how, again, the best way to get out of it is to get involved. And I decided to join the program committee, which is the committee that helps choose the speakers that come on board, and got to know a few people and started to look forward to not only the meetings for the speakers, but also the people that I would see there as well.
Yeah.
And then I liked it so much that the executive director, Leah Schatzman, I told her one time, what do I have to do to get on the board to get more involved? Just curious. And
music to an executive director's ears, by the way. It's like a lot of people don't understand that they're like, oh, how can I get more involved? I mean, they're like, whoa, hey, somebody wants to be involved? Oh my God.
I think her answer was, you just did.
Yeah, exactly.
So it wasn't too long after that, I got a call from the president at the time asking if I wanted to be on the board. I said yes. And the board of HTD, so there's an executive board, and then there's what they call the big board. And the big board, I think, is 12 people. And the executive board is just 5. And so I was only on the big board for about a year before they called and asked if I wanted to be on the executive board. And I jumped at it because by that point, it was something where I was getting so much value out of not only the content of the conference itself, but the networking and the people. And just, there are people there that now I've known for years that if I had a question about how to run a certain aspect of the business, I can call them. And even though technically we might compete, we're friends, and they'll answer me, and they'll help me out. And there's a lot of camaraderie in the industry, even though there's a lot of competition, right? It's not always seen as, me against you. Sometimes it's seen as us against the manufacturers, but no, there's a lot of good information that other people have. They've been running their business for years. Maybe there's something I can learn from them. Maybe there's something they can learn from me. So I jumped at the opportunity to get on the executive board, which not sure if I fully realized the commitment that was.
They don't tell you that. Leah is not going to tell you that. I mean, it's just,
Yeah. So the executive board, there's 5 positions, and it's a 2-year commitment per position. But you go through each one. So it's a 10-year
full decade
total commitment.
Commitment. So
you start right now. I'm the program chair, and I believe secretary is also in there as well. And there's also treasurer, there's membership chair, there's vice president, which everybody wants to be because you get all the perks of you get to go scout the new locations and everything like that. But you don't really have any full responsibility. So everybody wants to be vice president. And then there's president, which I think nobody wants to be president because you're the one that everybody complains to, right? You're the one that's like, this hotel's nice, but my room service really was not great, and I need to tell the president about that.
Yeah, I'm on it. I'll take care of that.
Although I will say, if Leah happens to hear this podcast, she's gonna say, no way, they only talk to me about that. Nobody talks to the president about that. But
it's the old deflection, Really? Oh, no, really. I think Leah could handle this one better than I could.
But no, it's been amazing. I've met a lot of people that I consider friends. I may only see them twice a year because we live on opposite sides of the country.
Right.
And there's a lot of people, like I said, competitors that I have no problem talking with, picking up the phone and talking to, because, you don't talk about the things that are going to give either one of you a competitive advantage, but everybody wants to see other people succeed. I think there's not a desire to, at least in our in our membership, to wish anybody harm. So it's fantastic. And I would encourage anybody if you're listening and you are a member of AHTD or you're a member of any organization, getting involved is the best way to get more out of it, because I feel like you only scratch the surface when you just attend. And that next level is the people that are there with you, not just the content. And I say that as I'm talking to somebody who is the content at some of those meetings.
That would be me. Yes, that is I am the content. Yes. Yeah, trust me, I don't have any higher opinion of myself than that. I am the content. And I spent a lot of time, in my trade association, and I went through the ranks as well. But it's really one of those things that you do get out of it, what you put in, and frankly, you get more out of it. I mean, I get a lot of things out of it. Frankly, I would not be in my position today, and I wouldn't have the opportunity to do what I do today without saying yes. I'm going to be a part of that. I mean, gave me exposure. But one of the things that you keyed on, you mentioned that I'd like to just talk about for a second is that there is a belief that competitors can't talk to each other civilly, and they can't help each other out. And I think that that's something that is really wrong. And I think also that prevents people from getting involved with their association, is because they're afraid that, that they're going to have to open the kimono too far, that there's going to have to share the secrets. And that's, honestly, there's not a whole lot of secrets, let's face it here.
And I would say, actually, I'm going to relate this to something I learned from you. If there's something that in a conversation you can reveal that like undoes your business to a competitor, that all of a sudden the competitor has the edge over you, you didn't really have a good hold on that business. And I say I'm going to relate it to you because I remember one of the courses I took at UID where you said something about, if you opened up your balance sheet, I think it was your balance sheet.
Your income statement.
Your income statement. If you gave your income statement to your competitors or your employees, like what would they be able to do with it? And nothing really, right? But everybody hides it. Everybody's like, no, this is mine. This is secret. And I'm not saying you have to publish it, but I latched onto that, and that, that's right. There's certain things that we don't have to hide and we don't have to, keep close to the chest. And some of that is just discussion with competitors. Obviously, there's things you can't talk about, right? There's, especially in our trade organization, there's things that you're legally not allowed to talk about, right?
Correct.
But, nobody, again, I don't look good in orange. I'm not trying to collude with anybody. But talking about the business and the struggles in the business. And one of the things we hear all the time in our organization is people want to talk about sales compensation and different compensation strategies. Yeah. And, hearing what a competitor does, even if I implemented their strategy, it's not going to make my business better than their business. Like, they may have a good idea that will help my salespeople, but it may not help them get the sale. It'll just maybe help their morale. But the same way, they may learn something from the way I do compensation that they're like, oh, I never thought about that. That's a good idea. And those things aren't secret. We have something because I read about it somewhere or I heard about it at a talk, right? So I think there's plenty of conversations that can be had with competitors that are valuable and are productive. Just not pricing. It's not pricing.
Right. We just don't talk. Yeah. We don't talk about pricing. We don't talk about costs. No, I think, John, you make a great point, that the ability to collaborate. I mean, I think that really makes all of your businesses stronger.
Yeah.
And all of you collectively. I'm a huge believer in that network collaboration.
It's something that we promote inside our company, right? So it's something that we want our people to collaborate. And I think everybody would agree that there's value in other perspectives, right? Even if it's something that you ultimately don't agree with or don't take action on, but getting another perspective on something is something that I think everybody wants to do for the most part. So if you want to do it inside your company, why wouldn't you want to do it outside your company too? Like, get other people's perspectives. You may realize something that you've been doing the same way for the longest time. Nobody else does it that way because it's the wrong way. Or you may realize that you're doing it the right way. But you don't know that until you talk about it. You don't know until you hear other perspectives on it. So.
Right. If you just keep that inside your own organization, you're going to be so limited as to your ability to grow and really to adapt and to change. So, no, as I said, I'm a huge believer in that. I believe that people, join your association and get involved. I mean, it's just absolutely one of the best. And a lot of the guests that I've had on the show, I mean, they talk a lot about really the success of their organization is due in large part to their involvement with their trade associations.
Yeah. I mean, it gets you in touch with not only other, the competitors are there as well, but manufacturers, and you can form a better relationship with some of your smaller manufacturers that you may not have one with, and you might find new manufacturers. That's one thing that our organization does is AHTD is every meeting we have a supplier showcase where basically all the distributors can walk around and see every manufacturer that's there. And I've found multiple manufacturers there that are now part of our portfolio that we hadn't done business with before, that sure, they're not our number one manufacturer, but they're important to us, and we make money selling their product. They like that we're making money selling their product.
They roll up the ranks. I mean, that's the thing, but they get that exposure, and you get the exposure as well. So I completely agree with that. So
yeah.
Well, John, I think, we've been chatting here for a bit, but I just want to thank you again, for taking the time. Absolute pleasure, speaking with you and learning a little bit more about your business and about the Navy world. And so
we just scratched the surface, right? But yeah,
we did. Maybe we'll have to do a part 2 here, but congratulations on this acquisition. And really, I'm excited for you all. I think this is going to be a whole new chapter for you.
Yeah, I hope so. And thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure.
All right. Take care, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider hitting that subscribe button. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area on your podcast application or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by Andrea Klunder and Edwin Ruiz of the Creative Imposter Studios. This episode was brought to you by Connected Peers Organization. CPO is a new organization dedicated to providing fast-paced monthly networking opportunities for industry peers. To learn more about how CPO can bring solutions to your role, visit us on the web at www.connectedpeers.com.